Speed up in the car. Roll! Oh, Jesus!
We have an update tonight on a story that horrified the community this week. Birmingham police have arrested 3 people as they investigate the shooting that killed a 21-year-old mother.
Your reporter James Giles covered the press conference about that shooting at the Monarch Ridge Apartments. He's live and on your side with the latest tonight. James.
Yeah, Steve, Brittany, I asked police what started the fight and shooting that killed Asia Poole, and they did not answer. But they did make it clear that these arrests may not be the last.
168 bullets. Count that in your head. You'd still be counting 2 minutes from now. That's how many bullets police found scattered across the parking lot of Monarch Ridge Apartments on a Tuesday night in August. The shooting lasted 31 seconds, more than 5 bullets striking cars, walls, and concrete every single second. Residents described it as a war zone in our backyard. Children dove under beds. Parents covered their babies with their bodies, praying the walls would hold. What started as an ordinary Facebook argument between 21-year-old Asia Poole and 19-year-old Janiyah Hendricks would forever alter the life of a 4-year-old girl who had already lost too much. The live stream showed it all. Asia in her white top, stepping back, turning away. Argument over. Going home to her daughter, the same little girl who just lost her father 1 week earlier. Then guns appear without warning. Not just one, 4 people raising weapons simultaneously. The night erupts with gunfire. By the time the echoes faded, a young mother lay motionless in the breezeway, blood soaking into concrete as hundreds watched through their screens, typing comments instead of calling 911. Somewhere across town, a 4-year-old slept peacefully, not knowing that in the span of 7 days, she had become completely alone in the world. The same child who had birthday parties with 2 parents just months earlier would now have none, all because of comments about a man whose name barely appears in the police report, a man who wasn't even there when the triggers were pulled. 168 bullets, a mother gone, a child orphaned, and thousands watched it happen in real time, choosing to be spectators to horror rather than fellow humans. What does that say about what we've become?
Have you ever typed something online you'd never say to someone's face? That cutting comment, that perfect comeback, that moment of digital courage when the screen protects you from real-world consequences? We tap send, close the app, and walk away. But what if that message is still burning in someone else's mind hours later? What if it's the match that lights something we never intended? What haunted me about this case wasn't just the gunfire. It was how familiar everything before it looked. The notifications, the group chats rallying friends, the comments section becoming a battlefield where retreat meant weakness. This happened in Birmingham, Alabama, but it could have been anywhere. Your city, your apartment complex, your social circle. Drop your location in the comments, not just to help others find this story, but as a reminder that these are humans behind the screens. If that matters to you, if you believe these warnings need to reach more people, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Share and stay tight as we dissect these escalating patterns.
You're watching Hidden Crime Network.
Janiyah, whoop this whole ass.
Get that whole ass.
Y'all get out the car. Hey, bud.
Asia Elias Poole was 21 years old, young enough that adulthood had barely started, but already shouldering responsibilities that many twice her age couldn't imagine. Friends describe her with admiration, loyal to a fault, quick to laugh even on hard days, and completely devoted to her 4-year-old daughter. She was the friend who'd show up at 3 a.m. if you needed her, one childhood classmate told investigators. But after her baby was born, her whole world narrowed to that little girl. Everything was for her future. What makes this story particularly devastating isn't just how Asia died, but when. Just 1 week before that fatal Tuesday night, Asia had buried her child's father. The grief was still raw, that peculiar, disorienting grief that comes when someone too young is gone too soon. Grief doesn't follow rules. It warps judgment, shortens tempers, and makes mountains of molehills. For a young mother already carrying the weight of single parenthood, that grief became a lens through which every slight, every online comment grew magnified. Now her daughter, just starting pre-K, still learning to write her name, faces a future where both parents exist only in photographs and borrowed memories. The little girl who once had a mother who braided her hair every morning now lives with grandparents who struggle to explain the unexplainable.
I wrote echoes of caution after studying hundreds of cases like Aisha's. The warning signs were all there. Private messages becoming public challenges, family members being drawn in, threats about pulling up, the shift from keyboard courage to physical confrontation. What terrifies me is how predictable these tragedies have become. The book transforms these patterns into protection strategies, especially for parents trying to recognize when intervention isn't helpful, but life-saving. Scan QR code or check link below for your copy. Monarch Ridge Apartments sits in East Birmingham like a fortress of faded brick and narrow breezeways. Locals still call it Valley Brook, a place where rent stays just within reach and window air hum against Alabama summer heat. The security cameras mounted at building corners tell their own tragic story. They record, but nobody watches. The footage only matters after something happens. Digital eyes that witness everything, but prevent nothing. Birmingham itself wears violence like an ill-fitting coat, one it's been trying to shed for years. In 2023, the city averaged a shooting every 32 hours. Behind each statistic stands a neighborhood like this one, where gunfire is common enough that children know to drop to the floor when the popping starts. At Monarch Ridge, community forms in the spaces between caution. Neighbors watch each other's children while keeping wary eyes on strangers. They share meals across thresholds, but rarely venture far after dark. They know which arguments to ignore and which might spark something worse. But obviously not this time. It was in this pressure cooker that Aisha Poole and Janiyah Hendricks' fatal paths would collide. No one can pinpoint the exact moment this conflict ignited. Some say it began with a comment under a photo. Others claim it was a direct message about a man both women had history with. What's certain is that by early August, the digital hostility between Asia and Janiyah had crystallized into something dangerous. The messages started privately, short, pointed, personal. But privacy seldom survives when emotions run hot. What might have once been a contained disagreement transformed into public theater. Screenshots shared, friend groups tagging in, family members defending their own. Each notification pushed the conflict further from resolution. Court records revealed over 72 messages exchanged in the 48 hours before the shooting, the tone growing increasingly hostile, threats becoming more specific, challenges more direct. Have you ever noticed how differently people act when they have an audience? How compromise becomes impossible once others are watching? Psychologists call this audience-induced escalation, when observers transform a conflict from something that could be resolved into something that must be won. Online, that audience multiplies exponentially. Every like, every share becomes another witness expecting a performance. By August 19th, the challenge to meet face-to-face appeared. Pull up or shut up. Those 5 words in the final message exchange, but here's what separates routine arguments from tragedies. Who else decides to pull up with you? Both women began mobilizing support. Friends, family members, people with access to firearms, all summoned through messages. Janiyah's brother, 20-year-old Justin Hendricks, her cousin, 22-year-old Taylor McLeod, their friend, 20-year-old Aquaria Woods,
all preparing to arrive armed with weapons far deadlier than words. As the sun set on August 20th, phones converged on Monarch Ridge, a 21-year-old mother leaving her daughter with a relative saying, "I'll be back soon." But she wouldn't be. The parking lot at Monarch Ridge was alive with tension by 9:45 p.m. Cars lined the perimeter, engines idling. The blue-white security lights cast everyone in the same ghostly pallor. Phones were already up, live streaming to hundreds of invisible spectators. When Asia stepped from a friend's car wearing a white top, the crowd parted. A witness would later describe the air as electric, like right before lightning strikes. The camera angles jump as people position themselves. Friends cluster behind their champions. No one, not a single person, steps forward to stop what's coming. The argument begins with words that barely register over the crowd's energy. Then comes the rush of movement. Asia and Janiyah locked in confrontation over the hood of a car. Hands flying, hair pulled, bodies pressed against metal. Voices rise, encouraging, warning. This is where tragedy finds its momentum, where a bad decision becomes an irreversible one. The first weapon appears in the hands of a young man at the edge of the crowd, then another emerges from a waistband, and another from a car. In the live stream footage, you can track the exact moment when fists become insufficient and lethal force takes center stage. And that's when everything changes. In that suspended moment before the first trigger pull, dozens of lives hang in balance. Children sleeping in apartments, families watching television, a young mother taking one last step toward safety. The choice made in that fragment of time would echo far beyond Monarch Ridge apartments.
I sometimes wonder if our phones have made us numb to the humanity on the other side of the screen. What would happen if I handed you Aisha's phone that night? If you saw those messages escalating hour by hour, would you have set it down, turned it off, told her that whatever man they were fighting over wasn't worth what was coming? There's a moment in conflict, digital or physical, when pride takes the wheel and sense jumps out the window. If this story is making you uncomfortable, it should. Because somewhere in your city, another online argument is reaching that same boiling point right now. Another audience is watching, waiting, amplifying. And if you haven't subscribed, liked, and shared this video yet, I wonder why. The first shot fractures the night at 9:52 p.m. Not a warning shot fired skyward. Not a single round in panic. What security cameras and live streams capture is a coordinated wall of fire. 3 people raising weapons simultaneously, aiming at the same breezeway, fingers pressed against triggers until magazines run empty. Watch the footage frame by frame and you'll see Justin Hendricks' face illuminated by muzzle flash, Taylor McLeod adjusting his stance to absorb recoil, Akoria Woods advancing while continuing to fire. Their weapons, modified pistols and a Draco-style firearm with extended magazines, weren't brought for protection. They were brought for this exact moment. 168 casings. That's not a reaction, it's an execution. A mother, pushing her 2-year-old into a bathtub 3 apartments down, would later tell police, "The building was shaking. I covered my baby with my body and prayed the bullets wouldn't come through our walls." In the surveillance footage, you can see Aisha turning away when the bullet strikes her back. No dramatic spin, no final words, just a young mother crumpling onto concrete. And that's real life for you. I don't know why we forget that too easily. As people scattered, as Aisha lay dying, Janiyah Hendricks, the woman whose conflict with Aisha started everything, jumped into Aisha's own car, which had been left running. She drove away in the vehicle belonging to the woman whose life was draining onto concrete, yards away. It wasn't just murder, a detective would testify. It was erasure, taking her life, then taking her property, as if to say she never existed at all.
Emergency services arrived at 10:07 p.m. For Aisha Poole, it was already too late. For her daughter, it would always be too late. The shooters had vanished into the night, leaving behind only shell casings and live streams. Digital ghosts of a violence too real, too final, too senseless to comprehend.
In most homicide cases, detectives spend weeks piecing together fragments, searching for reluctant witnesses or grainy footage. But Asia's killing was one of the most thoroughly documented murders in Jefferson County history. 4 separate Facebook live streams captured events from different angles. Security cameras recorded both confrontation and shooting. Dozens of bystanders had their phones up recording everything in high definition. The evidence wasn't hidden, it was broadcasting. Within hours, Birmingham detectives identified their primary suspects, faces clearly visible in videos, weapons in hand. Investigators created a second-by-second timeline using the digital footprint across social media. Justin Hendricks, 20. Taylor McLeod, 22, Akorea Woods, 20, and later a 17-year-old too young to be named, all captured firing toward where Asia fell, all identified by multiple witnesses. But here's the twist. Despite 168 casings recovered, despite multiple weapons identified, forensic analysis could only confirm Asia was killed by a single bullet to her back. Ballistic testing couldn't conclusively match that bullet to any specific weapon. This created the legal paradox. Multiple shooters, all clearly firing toward the victim, but impossible to prove beyond reasonable doubt which specific trigger pull caused her death. By August 25th, just 5 days after the shooting, all suspects were in custody. Janiyah faced a separate charge for stealing Asia's car. Perhaps most chilling, security footage shows not a single person stopping to help Asia as she lay dying. Everyone fled, some to escape, some to pursue, all abandoning the young mother whose life was draining onto concrete. The tragedy at Monarch Ridge sits at the intersection of 3 American epidemics: social media conflict, readily available firearms, and the pressure to maintain respect at all costs. Research identifies what psychologists call the audience effect, how observers fundamentally change human behavior. In physical confrontations, it might mean throwing that extra punch when friends are watching. Online, it transforms private disagreements into public performances, where backing down means losing face in front of thousands. When was the last time you changed your behavior because others were watching? How did it shift your choices, your words, your willingness to compromise? For Asia and Janiyah, what might have been a heated exchange became something else entirely when screenshots were shared, when comment sections filled with people choosing sides, when family members were tagged in. A 2022 University of Michigan study found conflicts documented on social media are 67% more likely to escalate to physical violence than those that remain private. The visibility creates what researchers call digital lockout, where neither party can back down without public humiliation. But social media alone doesn't explain 168 casings in a parking lot. In Alabama, where gun laws rank among the nation's least restrictive, firearms transform momentary rage into permanent tragedy. The 3 main suspects, all under 22, legally possessed modified weapons with extended magazines, weapons designed not for defense, but for maximum damage. What makes this case so devastating is how predictable it was. How each element formed a perfect storm that anyone could see building. Young people performing conflict for digital audiences, easy access to powerful weapons, the pressure to never show weakness when others are watching.
Authorities charged 19-year-old Janiyah Hendricks with theft of property, saying she stole Poole's car after fighting the woman just before the shooting.
When she was like, her car getting took, I'm running out after her car to get her car. After I'm running to the car, they was shooting, so I really can't tell who was shooting back.
Police say they pieced together who did what thanks to cameras at the apartment complex and a Facebook live stream of the entire thing.
We'll continue to investigate until we can find.
Every tragedy leaves behind what-ifs, moments where a different choice might have changed everything. The Facebook live streams could have triggered automated warning systems. Explicit threats exchanged could have been flagged by content moderators. Location sharing could have alerted authorities to a potential confrontation. But technology companies prioritize engagement over safety. The algorithms that detect threats well enough to serve ads somehow fail to identify explicit death threats. Alabama's permissive gun laws allowed young adults with histories of threatening behavior to legally obtain and modify weapons. The firearms that turned a fist fight into a mass shooting were carried to Monarch Ridge without legal barrier. But the most painful what-if lies in human choices. Court documents reveal a devastating detail. 26 minutes passed between Asia arriving at Monarch Ridge and the first shot being fired. 26 minutes where dozens of adults could have de-escalated, separated, or simply left. 26 minutes where a different choice could have meant a young mother returning home to her daughter. The recovered videos show bystanders commenting casually on the escalating situation. "They about to get it poppin'," one wrote seconds before shooting began. Not a warning, not urging peace, but anticipation, as though violence were entertainment rather than tragedy. The same passive audience that watched Asia die is watching similar conflicts escalate right now in communities across America. In the months following the shooting, Monarch Ridge Apartments fell quiet in that peculiar way communities do after tragedy. A hush born not of peace, but of collective trauma. Children still played in the courtyards, but parents kept them closer. Voices stayed lower. Eyes watched doorways more carefully. The breezeway where Asia fell became an unofficial memorial. Flowers, candles, and teddy bears, marking where a young life ended over a dispute about a man. But memorials fade. Media attention shifts. Justice grinds forward in courtrooms far from public eye. And a 4-year-old girl continues growing in a world without her mother. When you strip away sensationalism and statistics, what remains is profoundly human. A child who will celebrate birthdays, lose teeth, learn to read, face disappointments, and achieve triumphs, all without the mother who should have witnessed these moments. There's a photo in local news coverage from Asia's funeral, her daughter standing beside the casket, small hand reaching toward her mother's face. A private grief made public. That little girl didn't choose this spotlight. She didn't choose to become the human cost of digital conflict and gun violence. Again, this is why I wrote Echoes of Caution, because in every case like Asia's, I see warning signs collectively missed. The book details digital patterns that precede physical violence and offer steps that communities, platforms, and individuals can take to interrupt these cycles before they end in tragedy. Because Asia's daughter isn't the only child who deserves a world where online rage doesn't translate to real-world bullets. What would Asia want us to learn from her story? Perhaps that walking away isn't weakness, it's survival. That the audience watching through screens isn't worth your life. That the momentary satisfaction of standing your ground pales against the permanent absence you might leave behind. Or perhaps, most simply, that the person on the other side of that screen, that argument, that gun sight, is as fully human as you are, with people who love them, with futures that matter, with a child who might be reaching for them long after they're gone.
In a digital age where conflict is content and backing down is seen as defeat, perhaps the most radical act is remembering our shared humanity. Before the cameras start rolling, before positions harden, before guns are drawn, before a child loses her mother and a community loses its sense of safety. Until next time, remember, the comment that feels worth fighting for today may cost someone everything tomorrow, and no online victory is worth a real-world funeral.
Stay safe, stay aware, and thank you for joining us today. See you on another story from the Hidden Crime Network. Bye for now.